Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're joining us today, wherever you happen to be. We really appreciate you being here. From time to time, as I have mentioned in the past, have had guests on who I met through a program called Potapalooza, which is a program for podcasters, people who might want to be podcasters, and people who want to be interviewed by podcasters. And this last June, we had Potapalooza number 16. And one of the people I met there was Tracy Huff. And I I made her an offer she can't refuse.
He
So
did, he
Tracy,
did, he
I
did.
did, I did. What can I say? And so Tracy is now here, and I got to be really careful because Tracy has a black belt, and that's pretty scary. And she was in the military, so probably she could beat me up. Except that I'm going to stay across the country from her. She's in North Carolina, and I'm in California, so I don't think we have to worry about that too much. Besides that,
No,
I could deal with Tracy anytime I want. All I got to do is let my guide dog go play with her, and
that's
she'll be
right. Lick
diverted.
me to death.
Yeah. Well, Tracy, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. It was such Podapalooza was such an amazing event, and you got to meet so many amazing people. So I'm so glad to be here.
It was a lot of fun. Was that your first one?
That was my first one. That definitely, yeah, that was my first one.
So, do you have a podcast, or were you just wanting to be interviewed, or what?
No, I had a podcast and then I stopped doing it. So I just wanted to get in the room with other podcasters to see what they needed, how like me, how I could support them with their podcast, right? Because sometimes we get so focused on what I can say, but like what are they trying to create and aligning myself with people like you, like Unstoppable Mind, are saying is be exceptional. Like just like those people that have those things in place and supporting in the tools that we use to do it. So um, and I really didn't know what else to expect. But there was just so much more there, the teaching and the learning and the sharing and the interesting people and all of the stories. And it felt good to know that there were so many other people like me trying to do something good in the world. Sometimes we feel
Hmm.
like we're rolling that rock uphill. So that was the other
Oh,
thing.
sometimes we are, and it gets to be
Yeah,
quite a challenge, but
yeah.
um, it is fun. I was really blessed. We found Amplify You early on, and so they've helped me from the beginning. And of course, now Michelle is really very deeply involved in Potapalooza and other things, and so other people have taken over more of the Amplify You stuff.
Hmm.
But by the same token, um, it's a joy to be able to work with her and the entire crew. I
Yeah.
haven't taken their cruise yet. I'm going to have to explore that in the
Yeah,
future.
I think I'm right there with you. Maybe we should make sure we go on the same maiden voyage together because it sounds like really, really interesting. And another organization I'm involved with, Genius and Lock, that are also just amazing. They highly, highly, highly recommend it. So yeah, we'll have to make sure we make that happen.
We'll have to do that. My wife passed away in 2022. We were married for 40 years, and we've taken several cruises because she was a travel agent, and so for in a variety of ways we did. And now that it's just me, just the typical vacation is not something that really thrills me. Where am I going to go where I can just
Yeah.
kind of tour around? And I know that a lot of people do it more than I'm willing to, but cruising is certainly something that's real easy. Even if I never leave the ship, I can. I can just enjoy the ship and be on the ship all day long and have a lot of fun. I know full well that just being on the ship is a great experience, much less all the things they're going to do.
Yeah. It sounds so cool. It's just not something that well, it's just I'm in the middle of I don't know, like a re-energizing, a remorphosis of my business with what I'm doing. So it's getting a lot of the systems and stuff in place so I don't feel like I can do that just yet. And when I go on a marketer's cruise like that, I want to be all pistons on, hitting on all pistons, like just
Yeah.
ready to just take advantage of everything. So that's where I am. It's a good, exciting place to be.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it definitely is. And
yeah.
We'll have to do it. Well, let's start talking about you a little bit. Tell me about the early Tracy, growing up and all that stuff.
Oh, so I'm the middle child, right? So I'm the middle child. I've got a brother and sister above me, and I've got sisters behind me. They're twins. Um, and I just, I was just always the middle child. Like, I always just went along to get along, Like I always just did what I was supposed to do, be the good girl, do what I'm told, try and be helpful. That was kind of me until I joined the army to pay for college and met my husband. That was the first like defiant act I've ever took. Because my dad didn't know how to pay for college. I was the first person that in our family that wanted to go to college, and they had no idea how to get anything for it. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, that was early Tracy. I just, took on my mom's work ethic and I took on like some of my dad's boldness. He always used to, quote Attila the Hun, lead follower, get out of the way. And that's kind of been my motto in a lot of the things that I've done.
So, how did you? We'll get to it. I don't know whether it's too early to ask, but how did you end up with a fourth degree black belt?
One of my sons, my younger son, had so much problems with peer pressure. He was like getting in trouble in school, and this was not my troublemaker. Like this was my sweet. He hates when I say this, but it's true. He was like my little Pillsbury Doughboy, like happy-go-lucky, always fun to be around. And I'm getting calls at the school for him, and so I knew he was struggling to find like who he was because he was going to the same schools after his brother, and everyone was comparing him to his brother, and he was the polar opposite of his brother. So I was asking around and I was at a BNI meeting and met someone who taught martial arts. And I was talking to now a really good friend of mine, David Scrow, about like, will this work? How does this work? And so he's like, yeah, we can help. We'll definitely help build his self-esteem. And so I said, okay, well, let's try it. And I brought him to classes. And at the time, I was running my computer company. I had just started my computer company, and I was getting that off the ground. And my husband was in Iraq. Um, as a contractor. So he was gone. I had called myself geographically single. And I was sitting in the karate school watching my son do class, so stressed out, like just so tense, so stressed out, like taking like almost his entire class, trying to like relax, 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 knowing that that 30 minutes I was there, I had like all these things I wasn't getting done. And that's when I thought maybe I should just try class. I mean, they're yelling and they're hitting stuff. I could do that. That would feel good to me. And that's how I got started. I joined my younger son in class and found it to be one of the only places in my life that I didn't think that I could do things. Everywhere else, I was like, yeah, as long as I can unbreak it, I can break it, right? Like everywhere else, I was confident. I would try anything. I would fearlessly go. But on that mat, when they wanted me to do like a jump, anything, I'm like, excuse me, what? You want me to take all of this and put it up in the air and then hit a target? Are you crazy? Like, because I started martial arts when I was in my 30s. And I was just so shocked at like, wow, this is a place that I can really develop me on a whole new level. And so it started just as get some stress relief and get my body moving and learn something about myself. And I just fell in love with the process. I fell
So
in
what?
love.
So what art? What exactly did you get the black belt in?
I am a black belt in Tung Sudo. And
Okay.
Tung Sudo is a Korean martial art. Not a lot of people are familiar with Tung Sudo, but Tung Sudo and Taekwondo originated from the same master. We just had two, they just took two different directions.
Hmm. Okay. So you, if we use the old Bill Cosby joke, well, he talks about karate. He says you got to beat up on things until you make your hand look like a foot.
Well, we try not to do that. We try
Yeah, I
not to do that.
understand. I
Yeah.
understand. Well,
But that's the old school way of thinking, some things you keep, some things you let go.
that's it. Well, so you joined the army. Well,
Mhm.
first of all, where did you go to college?
I went to college here in Fayetteville State. So at Fayetteville State University here in Fayetteville, because I joined the Army to go to college, strictly get the Army College Fund, pay for school, do my 4 years, get in, get out, go back to Illinois where I could go to school for free as a veteran. And then that was my plan. And then life happened. Then I got to
Yeah.
my first duty station and met my husband, and it took my life in a whole different direction.
Well, are you from North Carolina originally?
No, I'm from Illinois.
You're from Illinois. Where?
I'm for Mokina, Illinois.
Okay.
New Lenox, Frankfurt. Yeah.
Okay. But how did you end up then being in Fayetteville?
I met my husband, and I tell
That's a
everyone,
start.
and yep, he hates when I say it, but it is completely utterly true that I met him, he seduced me, impregnated me, and forced me to marry him.
Are you there?
I am.
Okay, so I don't know why it cut out, but anyway, so
It's okay.
we were talking about how you ended up in Fayetteville.
Yeah, yeah. So I met my husband. He seduced me, impregnated me, and forced me to marry him. That's the story I tell. And that's true. I met him and got pregnant with my first son. And then we got married. And so I ended up finding a husband, which wasn't my plan. Having a baby, not my plan either. And then just moving to Fayetteville to be together.
And you're still together?
Yes, we are.
Well, there you go. So he can
Yeah,
complain all he wants.
that's right. He stuck with me.
Yeah, that's
He
it.
did it.
That's it. So was he in the army also?
Yes, yeah, we met
Uh-huh.
at our first duty station in Ansbach, Germany.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's
Mhm.
not like you were nearby when you met each other. You had to go across the ocean to do it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
What did you do in the military?
I was signal. I was in communications. I worked
Hmm.
radio. Yeah.
My father was in the 3rd Division during World War II and in the
Wow.
Signal Corps.
Nice.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he was always involved with communications. He went back to Chicago after the war, and he and my uncle formed and started a TV repair shop.
Oh.
Because back in those days, you didn't get new TVs if something died. You called a
Yeah.
repair person, and they came out and they replaced tubes or resistors or capacitors or whatever,
Yeah. Yep.
and did that. And then we moved out to California when I was 5, and he um, came out here and worked for the military, was a contractor, and was involved in becoming the supervisor of the Precision Measurements Equipment Lab, dealing with all the test equipment that the military used for various things. So he was
Oh, wow.
very heavily involved in the space program, worked with Neil Armstrong and other
That is
people like
super
that. Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it really was. He had a lot of fun
Yeah.
doing it. So you went off and had kids, and how many children altogether?
I just two. Just
Just
two.
two.
Two boys. Two
Two.
boys and three grandsons. Two boys and three grandsons.
Oh my gosh. Well, there you
Hmm.
go. And
Yeah.
so when you got out of the military, um, what did you do? Were you just were you a mom, or did you do other things, or what?
No, I mean, well, I got out of the military as a mom, and I did what I set out to do. I went to school. I mean, I went joined the army to pay for college, and I used my army college fund and my GI Bill to pay for my education, and got my degree, my bachelor's degree in
In,
business, and then
in business, okay.
yeah, and then I got my associate's degree in computer network and repair, and so
Hmm.
I squeezed every dime of that money. I used every last cent to get my education. And that's what put me on like the computers and like my last duty station in the army, I learned how to repair equipment. I was stationed in a maintenance battalion as a signal operator, as a communicator, as a radio operator. And so the I learned how to do first and second level repairs on my equipment so that when I brought my equipment down to the shop, the guys would see my equipment first. Like I'd say, I've already checked all these things and I've already done all this maintenance, and it didn't fix it, so that I was making their job easier. So they always took really good care of me. That's kind of how I got involved in repairing computers and stuff. And ironically, when I was joining the Army, they offered as a job in the military for me to learn how to repair hospital equipment. And when I joined the military, I thought, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. And they're like, yeah, you can. You're totally eligible to do this. And I didn't believe them. So it's just ironic that come full circle, that's what I ended up doing as a radio operator was learning how to fix it so that I could have the confidence to know that that wasn't out of the scope of my skills.
Wow. Well, that that was kind of fun, but it certainly is different dealing with computer and equipment repair on one hand and business on the other.
Yeah, it's so, but when, and you probably know this, when you're in a military town, there is not a lack of people with education and people with a lot of skills. So on the job market, it was a dime a dozen. So it wasn't finding anything. I wasn't finding anything that I was really looking for work. And everything that was coming up was something like, I'm like, I have a 4-year degree. I am not going to settle for this. Like I put in the work, I did the things. And so I just challenged myself to that next level. At that time, now this is funny. I don't know the age of your audience, but I did that. I did that degree with a school in California when it was just dial-up.
Hmm. AOL and
Yeah,
CompuServe and
yeah,
110 baud modems, and
yeah,
then we
I
got
did.
300 baud and 9600.
Yeah,
That was a big jump.
I did. So like when I did that, I did it online. Boop, hearing the modem go. Yeah. And so I got my degree with a school in California to get me started, so that I could work and go to school at night and take care of my kids and, be there for my husband, that kind of thing.
I remember when I got my first Hayes smart modem, and I think it was 1200 baud. It may have been 9600. I can't remember. But anyway, it was what a time.
Crazy,
Woo.
crazy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think
And
this generation having to deal with dial-up, I think their heads would explode.
they would.
I think it
And
would
I had a
explode.
computer, a Xerox Sigma 7 with two 8-inch floppy drives, no hard drive,
Hmm.
and eventually a PC with hard drive. And I
Yeah.
remember I formed a company to sell computer aided design systems to architects and
Hmm.
engineers. And I remember the first time somebody wanted a decently large disk drive, and we got a 70 megabyte hard drive.
A few years ago, we cleaned out a garage. I found like a 20 gig hard drive, and that was like the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, look at us. Oh, that's
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, so you dealt with computers, but then did you ever involve or do anything with the business degree?
well, yeah. So I opened up my a computer company with those skills. So that's where I first implemented the stuff I did with my business. So I had a computer networking company for a while, and then when I opened up the karate school basically for a friend. Like it was a collaboration, but he was a martial artist that I wanted to learn from, and he needed a place to teach out of. And
Hmm.
so I said, "Oh, well, I can do this." I had my computer company and I was doing that. And it was in a way he was teaching at a rec center. But the way my work schedule was, like if I had to work late on Tuesday or a Thursday, I wouldn't get to train that week because those were the only 2 days that he could teach at the rec center. So it was really selfishly that I said, "Well, I'll go ahead and help you get like the school. We'll do it together. That way I can train any day that I can, and then you'll have a space." And so that's how I became a martial arts school owner. And for a time, I did computer stuff during the day and then karate stuff at night. And I did that for a few years where I was doing both of them for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
You definitely were involved in doing some networking, not only of the computer kind, but the physical kind as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just earlier today had a chat with another graduate of Potapalooza 16, Michael Whitehouse. And Michael is all about networking. We had a wonderful conversation about the whole
Nice.
concept of networking, which was really kind of fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you started the karate school,
Hmm.
and how long did that go?
It's still going.
It's
I
still
started,
going. Okay.
yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, for a really long time. I love it. I mean, I love it. I was talking to one of my clients the other day. We were talking about being on autopilot. We were talking about it's not necessarily a bad thing when you're on autopilot. And I was telling him, like, me being on the mat teaching class is like autopilot. I feel like it's the easiest thing I get to do in the day because I love it. I love what we create with it. Every class, no matter how I envision it, we create it together with the students. And so I'm just addicted to that of it. I do love to teach. I do love to teach.
So, but you also are doing various things to guide parents. You teach them to lead, and you teach people to work together without yelling at each other. How do you do
Yeah.
that? And isn't that kind of a hard thing? How do you get people to do that rather than what typically I think we usually see today?
Yeah, so that's really what, and that's the other thing that keeps me going because like I've been doing this for a really long time. And right before COVID and definitely after COVID, so I teach 3-year-olds. Like the youngest I teach are 3. And I teach them because we know that their brains are creating the neural pathways and they're creating identities about who they are and what they're capable of. And so that's why I took that age group on because I wanted to like create some things for them that will serve them the rest of their life. And after COVID, that group used to come in and I would say, "We're gonna jump and stand on our heads for 10 minutes." And they would say, "Yeah, yeah, Master Hope, let's do it." But after COVID, they were coming in with so much negative self-talk. I can't do that. That's too hard. And so I really evaluated my program to see what to highlight the personal development piece because it's always been personal development for me. And well, let me back up a little bit because even we've always done it. It's always been about leadership. It's always been about personal development. It's always been about being exceptional. Like to walk in the room and being exceptional for you. Like make that your standard. Like mediocrity is the enemy of excellence. And so being exceptional is our standard. So we're always striving to do that. And that's what we've done for years and years and years and years. And so during COVID, I had a group. We had a few challenges besides COVID. I had a group of black belts that continued to train throughout the entire pandemic over Zoom so that they didn't miss a beat when it came to testing for their black belts. And so they exemplified that state of excellence, right? That state of being exceptional. And then I myself ended up being in the hospital and twice and in the ICU twice. And so during that time, um, I had to use my black belt mind to get back into my body and onto the mat. So through all of those things, like we were being excellent, we were being the things that we were talking about and observing the parents and the people coming back from COVID and listening to how they were talking to each other, talking about themselves is where I really started to pull out like that group of black belts. Like what did we create with that black belt? I actually highlight them in my book because they exemplified the process that we've done and started to really pull out the mindset and the foundational mental and personal development skills that go along with the physical skills to create this environment where I teach the parents, right? That it's about the communication of the thing and not just the communication, but the body language when you communicate, the energy when you communicate, and how that in order to do that without yelling, you have to really be the leader of yourself first. And that's really what I noticed when I was looking at and of those students that trained with me at that time, we're only there's only 3, no, Mikey, Brett, there's only 4 that don't still train with me today.
Hmm.
And now actually they're testing for their second and their third degrees now. But that's where we really help them learn those skills, if that answer makes sense.
So you're teaching the kids karate. How do you have success at teaching the parents, or are they taking courses as well, or how does that work?
So I do some coaching with the like so we coach the kids and Evil Ninja Hack. We coach the kids and make the parents help the kids with their we
Ah,
call it their U work. Like they have to help them with their U work. And so we're teaching the kids the principles as part of their U work. So we have a whole training portal set up for the parents. So and we have the mindset curriculum every month. So July was about resilience and everything we did was intentionally hard. And so it brings up the conversations at home. And then the parents are having to ask, how do I have these conversations? And that's when we get the opportunity to really work with them on teaching them what I do as an instructor on the mat with their kids, because they always say, how do you get them to do that? Like, how do you get my kids to do that? And so that's where it opens the door for me to explain to them that it's just
hmm.
principles, it's understanding some things. And so that's one way. And then I have courses for them. And the kids the kids go home and tell their moms and dads, Master Huff says, or if Master Huff were here, she would say, right? And then the parents say, don't make me tell Master Huff. So we kind of build this community around holding each other accountable for doing the things.
Accountability is such a very powerful thing and a very appropriate thing. I know if you're creating any kind of team and you're
Mhm.
really creating a good, close knit working team, accountability is a huge part of that.
Yeah. Well, and then, the biggest obstacle with any of this is teaching people to trust themselves, like teaching people to go inside and see themselves as a leader, right? Because
Hmm.
that's the concept that, I mean, again, with the 3-year-olds, because we teach them this concept too. Like, you are a leader. Because in the martial arts school, it's easy because they have rank. So it
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you're 3 or 5 or 15 or 70, we all have rank. So once you have a color on your belt, then you are a leader of everyone who doesn't have a color.
Hmm.
And then once you have the next color, then you're a leader of all the people that are behind you, and setting themselves up to see themselves like that, and to see that their actions have consequences, the way they communicate has consequences, um, and that they can impact things positively. And then we've set it up in our culture that the students are every promotion ceremony they get to say what are they proud of themselves for, and it always surprises my black belts that are instructors, because all my black belt students teach class for me as well, that when they are named, like Miss Lydia, when Miss Lydia showed me this, or when Miss Marianne did this, or when Mr. Dev showed me that, it really showed me that I could do these things. So it builds like just a flow, right? A flow, because then you kind of get addicted when you know that you can impact someone like that. And it's all by showing up and being exceptional and being responsible and accountable to being that leader that I hold them to be, then it builds that momentum.
And you're able to have a good amount of success then with the parents, and they catch on.
Yeah, yeah, they do. And not all of them, right? Some of them,
Yeah, some don't.
but I always look at it like as long as I have you, I will do what I can,
Hmm.
right? Um, but yeah, and that's why the students that I have been with me for years and years and years and years, because they know that we're working on the people, and we're working on, I always say I teach 3-year-olds because it's my solution to our leadership problem. Like, I'm going to teach the kids to build the neural pathways to develop leaders, to see themselves as leaders, and to hold themselves accountable for leading. And the parents don't necessarily see themselves as leaders either. So a
Yeah.
lot of what we get to have with them is like, you are the first leader. And if you don't have the tools, that's okay. I can teach you. I can show you how. I can teach you how to do it. We can do it together so that you're not alone.
Do you actually have courses for parents then as well, or
Yes,
for
I
adults?
do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. We do adults, we do family classes so that you can train together. I started training with my younger son, Steven. I always recommend it if they're down for it, because where else, like we did some sparring last night, so we had some fathers and daughters sparring each other, right? Good energy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just remember your dad's taking you home. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Just remember your dad's driving you home. But yeah, definitely.
But on the other hand, if you think you can beat your dad, there's humility is a good thing.
That's right. And if you can teach your dad a new way, well, we also integrate the lessons into class. So this week we're talking about personal best and talking about the concept of personal best and what it is and what does it mean to you and teaching all of our students, regardless of their age, to ask themselves some questions. And, how did you improve? What do you still need to work on? What are you proud of yourself for? Like, what did
Hmm.
you observe? How can you make it a little bit better? And teaching them those skills in context of the martial arts, and then helping them extrapolate it when I'm at school. Well, how can I be better? And making it their habit to see themselves as someone who is a fast learner, who can get
Right.
better, and to not take on the identities because there's crying in karate. Like I said, July was intentionally hard. We were working on resilience. And so when that comes up, then we talk to them about how do you handle your emotions? Why did that create that for you? And we start teaching them those tools. And then the parents are also involved in those tools because we have the U work that they get to do.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So, um, you said earlier that when the pandemic started, well, before the pandemic, you had kids come in and they'd stand on their heads, and you got them to do all sorts of exciting things. But things changed when the
hmm
pandemic occurred. Why did that happen? Why was there so much negativity all of a sudden?
Um, I think it was a few. I think it was a few factors. I think everyone, turtled, right? Everyone like drew into their shells, and being in such close quarters with them, they just we forget, especially with the people that are closest to us,
Hmm.
to respect each other on all the levels, like not just mother daughter or but brother sister, or just respect each other as human beings. And so some of the behaviors that were created were a result of being in that environment where people were sick of each other and they didn't have any other coping or communication skills. And so they spoke out of their frustration, they spoke out of their anger, they spoke out of all of the things, and it became how they communicated. And words matter, and you can communicate things, and then kids will take on that identity. Kids will take on whatever you tell them. So if you tell them that they are amazing and they're exceptional, then they'll say, I am amazing, I am exceptional. But if you tell them the opposite, you're too loud, you talk too much, sit down, you're always messy, they take on those too. And so they were coming back to out in the world after being in that little bit of an incubator like that.
Hmm. I know that when we went into lockdown here, I flew back out from a meeting where I spoke in New York on the 6th of March, and we basically just immediately went into lockdown. But the
hmm
blessing of me and my wife is that we spent so much time communicating and talking and all that anyway,
Yeah.
that it really wasn't very different for us, other
Yeah.
than we had
Yeah.
Lysol and we would spray boxes when they came in and did a couple things like that. But
Yeah.
it really wasn't very stressful for us because we're so used to each other.
Well, and how
And
long have you been married? How long have you been married?
well, at that time, we had been married, let's see, 2020, we were married in 1982, so it was 38
Mhm.
years.
Yeah. So like, and that's like we've been married a long time too. And we've built those coping mechanisms with each other, right? We know like, are you okay? Because you kind of felt like because we've been
Yeah.
together so long, yeah, that we have those communication skills. And when you're in that relationship that long, I just go, are you okay? And knowing that my husband, when I did get COVID, knowing that he was going to treat me like a leper, like I knew that about him, didn't surprise me. Didn't hurt my feelings, didn't surprise me. But like you understand those things. But I think parents with the pressure and the stress, and if you were, if you lost your job, if you didn't lose your job, like they just we just forgot how to treat people
Yeah.
as people, and especially our kids. And that happened before the pandemic, where parents just talk to they forget that they're raising human beings, that
Yeah.
they're
And
raising
there's way
adults.
too much of that. There's been way too much of that for a while. And now,
Yeah,
especially, it's getting even worse. And
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
unfortunate. Is
exactly.
that why you went into the hospital a couple of times because of COVID?
No, ironically, I went into the right before COVID happened. I was teaching the peewees, and I let them, and that's my 3 to 5 year old class, and I used to let them all fight me at the same time. And then if when we were doing with padded weapons, and when we were doing that, if they hit me, I would like pretend that I lost a limb. And so like they were, and they're vicious too. Like they smell, they're
I'll bet
vicious.
they are.
Yeah, they're vicious. So you're down on the ground, you have no limbs, and they didn't stop until I said. But when I fell and died a really good death, because I'm really good at that with them, I
Oh,
died a
good.
really good death. I pulled something in my leg, and I thought, oh, that felt weird. And then it kind of just moved from there, and I ended up being in the hospital and having to have surgery, and then ending up in the ICU because infection,
Oh,
and yeah, and then I had to get out of infection so that they could go and do the surgery that they needed to do, and then I was back in the ICU. So it kind of just worked its way down, but it started from dying a good death and letting
well,
those
there you go.
peewees beat me. Yeah.
And do they still do that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we did it
Oh,
last night.
I won't ask you to die a good death for us. That's
But
okay.
I'm really good at it. We act, we do the things. Yeah.
All the sound effects and everything, huh?
Yes, yes.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that COVID did cause for a lot of people, because we fear so many things, and we never really learn how to control fear.
Hmm.
We focus so much on worrying about everything under the sun that we become so afraid, which causes a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And so stress is clearly something that we are dealing with. But I know that you think that, in fact, power doesn't mean control, it means presence, which I
Hmm.
agree with, but I'd love you to
Yeah.
talk more about that, especially how that manifests or how you have to deal with that in a stressful situation.
Yeah. So everyone, and this is one of the misnomers about martial arts is everyone thinks you're in there to beat each other up, and we're really there to support each other. And being present is being not trying to control the person like we talked about, allowing that person to be whoever they are being, not trying to control their behavior, right? If anything's happening, you can only control yourself. So in that moment you get to choose, who do I want to be in this moment? What do I want to have happen in this moment? And teaching to take a breath, to get back into your body, to slow things down enough to be able to be present and make choices instead of just reacting or doing what you think has to happen because of whatever happens, but being able to be present with yourself, to be present in the moment and have the confidence to set that boundary and say, I'm not going to do that. So it shows up in class, like with the little ones, when we get the new ones, and they'll come in and they're going to try and tell me what to do in class. And I'm like, oh, we're not doing that today. Not today. Today we're going to do this, so like setting a hard line, setting a boundary, allowing them to express themselves, but letting them know that that's not going to happen. If behavior happens, just letting them understand that they can have that behavior, and then teaching them how to
Hmm.
move beyond that behavior. So teaching them it's okay to feel your feelings. I think that's one of the biggest things. The biggest things is everyone comes in and they think they can't feel their feelings. And it happens, sometimes it happens before they get to the karate school and they come in and they have all these feelings. And we usually explain, the purpose of bowing is to show respect, but it's also to empty your cup, to let everything that happened before you got here fall out. Take a deep breath and just be in your body for a moment and just to let your body do what it does. But sometimes, the emotions come up. We had a student last night in the sparring. She was like crushing it. She was like one of the top winners. And then all at the end of it, she had an anxiety attack,
Mm.
right? And so helping her get back into her body and just be present in this moment and making sure they understand that whatever you have the permission to feel your feels and you have to make choices that serve you. And that's just another layer where respect and honoring come in, that you have to respect yourself. But they get so caught up in the competitions because we were doing matches and we were doing a competition, and the winner got to tell all the non-winners what they got to do. So nobody wanted to be a non-winner. So they were all doing the things, right? But teaching them that you have to listen to your body and honor yourself to let that go so that you don't create that for yourself. Like respect yourself, honor yourself, set the boundary, speak up for yourself because it's important. So that's how presence shows up with us on and the age group, they all experience it. Like I said, there's a lot of crying. I don't know if there's a lot of crying in my karate school, but we intentionally create the space for them to do it so we can help them use it and learn how to use their emotions and be present and understand how our brains and our bodies and everything's supposed to work together, that they're not autonomous. We are humans being, and being creates things, and things get to be expressed and dealt with.
Well, martial arts certainly has a lot of techniques, and there are a lot of things that people learn. But isn't it ultimately really much more about mindset and how you learn to use your mind than anything else?
It does. I mean, it definitely is. And I was having this conversation with a parent the other day because uh her daughter has been training with me for a while, and it's time for her to do her black belt test. And her mom's like, but she doesn't know like this technique or that technique. And I told her that there's a point where she does know it, but she doesn't trust herself to know it. So we have to put her through the crucible of the test to prove to herself that she can trust herself to
Yeah.
let her body do the things. And it totally is about that. But most people just see that very first level, especially if you've never experienced it,
Hmm.
right? Because it looks so easy until you have to like count, and then you have to jab, and you have to kick, and then you have to not get hit in the face, but then you also have to keep your feet moving and not put them together. Like there's a lot that goes on with what they're doing. But yeah, it's definitely about mindset. It's about getting back up, right? The confidence is built by doing,
Yeah.
and doing and failing, and then going, okay, well that didn't go so well, and so incorporating that and bringing it and highlighting it out for the kids to see that that's the process. That's one of the things that I've really worked towards over the last, like since we've gotten back from the pandemic, because they don't realize they were great in the karate school, but at school they were still struggling, or at home they were still struggling. And so being able to pull this out into habits and ways of being so that the parents can see it and the kids can see it, and they can start identifying the patterns and start using that language with themselves
Yeah.
outside. But yeah, it's definitely that. A lot of people don't give it the chance. Some people don't make it to the first test, right? Some people get all the way to where it's time to test for black belt, but they're afraid to do it. So they keep making excuses why they're not ready, or they'll consistently not like learn the things to get ready. I've had a few students do that. One of those students was my husband. We all teased and said, I said, I'm gonna wrap a belt around your neck and pull you over the finish line. But he trained with one of my other students who's been training with me since he was 11, and he did it for Michael. Like he put in the work so that him and Michael could go together. So it was like the community of it. But yeah, it is really all about that, and about digging in and doing it when you're so afraid. I tested a student earlier this evening that was only here for the summer, and she was so nervous. And I told her everything that you're going to do, you've already been doing. You just get to do it and show off, you know? But the before test mindset and the after test mindset, that crucible and that putting you through, and this, like with your story and everything that you've gone through, and what you experience, it's the doing of the things that makes it easier to do the things.
Sure.
And then the easier it gets, you go for the harder things, and then those get easier. And then you've got to trust yourself to take them on, be willing to fall on your face, knowing that it's not it's not it's not going to kill you, and you can learn from it, and then you'll be better after.
Well, a lot of people talk about martial arts as a discipline, and you're even talking about your husband, and he was motivated to work to be able to be with and work with Michael. But you talk about unspoken authority. What is that exactly, and how do you help people develop that, as opposed to just the whole concept of discipline? And discipline's great, but there is more to it.
Yeah. So the unspoken authority is, again, it's all about the you work. It's about knowing your values, knowing your boundaries, knowing and believing in what you're capable of so that you're not having to prove to anyone around you what you're capable of. Right. And so with the students, we teach them how to stand into that with every belt rank, like knowing that these are the skills and help them embody that knowledge and that understanding. And with the parents, it's the same thing. Like knowing that when you know what you have to do, when you know who you know what your boundaries are, and you can give yourself permission to pause and to say what you want. You don't have to say it loudly. You don't have to yell. You don't have to scream. It's like that old commercial, E.F. Hutton. Do you remember that commercial? I bet you remember that commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah, like it was like, oh, everyone would stop talking because he walked into the room.
because
It's
E.F.
teach.
Hutton
That's right.
listens. Yes.
Because E.F. Hutton. So it's giving them that concept that and you and I have been around a while, and we all know that sometimes listening is more powerful than speaking, and teaching that you can listen, you can pause, and that you to be respected, you have to respect yourself. If you want others to respect you, you have to start by respecting you.
Yeah.
If you want to be listened to, then you have to listen, right? It's really teaching them how to create that space so that once you know those things, when it comes to having the authority, that's what your energy shows. It's not your words and it's not your volume and it's not about like all the things you get done. It's about how you show up in the world. And that's
Hmm.
the unspoken authority. Letting them and teaching them to show up as themselves and giving them the permission to be proud of themselves for being themselves with the skills that they have.
You
And
don't
that's for
have to
the
make a
parents too. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to make a big deal out of it.
No.
And in fact, it's not a good idea to make a big deal out of it. Just be yourself. I, I was just thinking, this is so interesting and emblematic of the movie The Karate Kid. Um, Patrick Morita didn't need to make a big deal. He just did it.
No. He just did it. Yeah. And I
And
think the other thing too, that we're in a society where, of course, our brains are made to want more, 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 more. But we're in a society where they're always moving for the next thing. And even the parents, and even some of the grandparents, where they're not going back and looking at saying, this is everything I've already learned. And this is everything I've already accomplished. And this is how I'm using this without even thinking about it. Right. And teaching them to build from that and to acknowledge that. I've had the chance to work with a summer program and then just teaching those kids that they don't have to wait for someone else to be proud of them, that they can be proud of themselves
yeah,
and they can be good finders about last time I did that, that sucked. This time I did that, I was fast. Right? Like I won. Like my feet were so fast and giving them that skill to stand in it and teaching parents to model that.
and the thing that comes to mind is though, don't let ego get in the way.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes. And people think there's I don't even know what to say about leadership right now. I really don't feel like we have a lot of really, really like when I think of leadership, I think of like John Maxwell, I think of Stephen Covey, I think of, my like sergeants that I've worked with and my parents. Like I felt like I had so many more role models of leadership than
Hmm.
what the last few generations have had. So I think this concept of a leader, they think is like this big title, like you have to be a CEO or a CFO or COO, or you have to be this big thing, but you don't, right? You
Mm-mm.
don't have to be that. And giving them that hat and saying you are a leader.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen, we do an anime camp over the summer, and I wasn't going to do it this year because I don't really like anime, and I didn't know if the kids really liked it last year, and I didn't know. So, but the kids were like, "No, Master Enough, we really need to do it." And I said, "Great, you guys are going to be leaders. Then it's your camp. You're going to run it. I'm going to facilitate it." And I put them in charge of the agenda and running the drills and making, and so I was facilitating it. And the one thing that was so amazing is, when one of the kids was in charge, they were arguing. I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Parker's in charge. So Mr. Parker, what's your decision? And he would look at me. I said, what's your decision? No, no, that person is out. I said, Mr. Parker has spoken, so there's no arguing. Continue. And once I supported them in that leadership role and said, your decision, you run it, then everybody wanted to run it. They
Hmm.
crave that. Like once they understand it, once you give them the space to step into it, even the smallest, like I think it was Lucas, he was 7. He wanted to be a leader. That's what gets me excited when you can show them that everyone can be a leader and you show them how to respect people in that position. And then it goes both ways.
Leadership is an interesting concept, and I think so many people really do get it wrong. Um, and the reality is, anyone can be a leader at any given time. We all have
Yes.
gifts, and our gifts
Yes.
will make us leaders in certain kinds of situations. And there was a lot of truth to that as we were going down the stairs at the World Trade Center, and different
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
were able to deal with things at given times because they had the skills to do it.
Hmm.
And we had an environment on the stairwell that promoted that kind of trust. So that, for example, there were times that I was clearly leading a lot of what we did, but
Hmm.
people trusted me because of things that I said, the way I talked,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and so on. And that's the way it ought to be. Leadership
Yeah.
is just not, it's just not some magical thing that, well, you're a leader and that's all there is to it. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Like
work that
poof,
way.
you put your leadership hat on and like poof, like the Matrix, you get everything in there. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's, and you have to experience it. And so for a while, when I first implemented that model with my senior students and putting them in an environment, because our motto is that we're developing the leader in you, and that's what we do. I got a lot of pushback from some people about I'm not paying for a kid to teach my kid. And I thought at first I reevaluated, but I said no. Like that's how they learn. How else are they going to learn to lead unless you let them fail? Like they've got to learn.
Or let
And
them
we
succeed.
Yeah, but they've got to be in that space where succeed or fail, they still know that they're going to be supported, right? And that's really that's the whole reason I wrote my book. Because I thought, okay, I'm sick of having this same conversation. I really need people to understand what we do here. And so that's why I wrote my book. So now everyone that enrolls in my school, I give a copy of my book because this is our philosophy. Like this is what we do. And now that's attracted the people that want what we do. But yeah, that's what we need to create, in my opinion. We need to create that and create that space for everyone to acknowledge their gifts and to be acknowledged for their gifts and to be set up
Yeah.
in a way that we utilize those gifts so that they can see a new way to utilize those gifts, you know, and be heard and be admired and be celebrated for who they are, whatever that looks like. And not be perfect. That's one of the biggest things is everyone wants to put this pressure to be perfect. Leaders are not perfect for the love of God and all that is holy. We just got to look at history to know that.
Yeah.
So, like taking off that expectation of perfection and putting on an expectation of learning from your mistakes and being willing to step into a gap to lead, like you said, on the stairwell. There are times to lead, there are times to follow,
Yeah.
right? And it shouldn't be ego based and it shouldn't be about the person. It should be about the mission. It should be
Yeah.
what are we trying to accomplish? Is this moving us forward or is it moving us backwards?
One of
How
the
do we
things that,
know?
yeah,
Mm.
one of the things that I talk about often when I speak and am talking about leadership and so on is that there's a big difference between being a boss and being a leader. Now, a boss
Mm.
can be a leader, but
Yes.
the problem with being a boss is that that in of itself doesn't help you gain respect.
Mm.
If you're going to be a real boss, then you should really be a leader, which also indicates or should indicate that you should know when it's time to let the mantle of leadership fall on someone else's shoulders to accomplish something.
Mm-mm,
And you should help people grow with that. Unfortunately, all too often, we don't see that.
mm-mm. No, we don't. Again, hence my 3-year-old program. I've been teaching 3-year-olds to do that. We have a student, they don't train with us. They moved to Korea, but let's see, 2017, we moved to a new building. And when I moved to the new location, like my 3 to 5-year-old program just kind of shrunk really quickly. And I had one student whose name is SJ, and he was the only one coming. His mom and dad were both in the military, so they were both, they understood the mindset. And so he would walk in and he's like, Master Huff, I'm the only one here. I said, yes, SJ, but we're going to teach you to lead this class. And so when he was the only one there, we would teach him how to lead class and teach him how to do the things. And then when we had students come in, we let SJ lead the class.
Lead the class.
And yeah, and so that's and he would do it. He comes in and he'd say, "Hi, I need you to sit right here, please, sir. Thank you." And so he modeled the behavior, and that's why I teach the 3 to 5-year-olds. If we can teach them,
Yeah. And if they will keep it, and you're able to have enough of an influence that going
yeah,
home doesn't change it, but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
always a challenge. What do
yeah,
you
yeah. The 3 steps forward, 2 steps back thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do when a parent says, I've just tried everything and I can't get my child to listen to me? What do you tell them?
Well, the first thing I tell them is that you're doing a great job. The fact that you are even continuing to try new things, continuing to try to do new things is saying something about you. It's saying, you are doing the things. And then the next thing we do is it's not about changing the kids. So if you're trying things and it's not working, look at you. How are you communicating it? How are you setting it up? Right? Going back to like treating our kids like the humans in training that they are, how are you communicating? What kind of learner are they? You know, are you saying things in a language that they're just not understanding? Because kids they don't want to be disrespectful, but a lot of times they don't have words to explain or describe what's going on. And
Hmm.
sometimes we're not listening. So that's what I usually tell them. How are you communicating? Ask better questions. You know, ask them what's going on with them before you take an action. And then the next thing we talk about is, just be really clear about your expectations and be very simple and clear so they know exactly what they're working with and exactly what's going to happen if that expectation doesn't get met. And don't be wishy-washy. Don't get suckered. If you say a thing, do the thing. So
You
those are
have to
those are
learn
the
to,
things.
they do
Yeah.
have to learn to be teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's okay to not be liked as a parent. My older son used to say, I feel like you're the police. I said, well, that's what my love looks like. I love you. If you feel like I'm the police, that's okay. I'm okay with that. Right. And being okay with letting your love be the thing and not them liking you. There'll be times when they're not going to like you. We just had that conversation with the black belts this evening for class. I said, Master Huff, we tried to do this and they didn't like it. I said, it's okay. It's like vegetables. You got to eat the vegetables. That's why we end with dessert. So end with this, feed them the vegetables, right? Just teaching them those strategies and teaching them how to approach it from a different perspective
Yeah.
and not the moment that they're in sometimes.
So you've worked with a lot of different kinds of people. And one of the things that I guess I will ask is, what do they all have in common when it comes to handling pressure?
Well, most most of them all have in common, like I said earlier, is that they put this expectation of perfection on themselves. They put this expectation of being judged on them, and they're making it about them and not about the people that they're leading.
Hmm.
So when you shift your outcome and you shift it to this is the thing that we're going to get done. And I know that I'm not going to be perfect. And let yourself let go of being perfect. Giving yourself permission to make mistakes, giving yourself permission to not know everything. And like you said earlier, delegate. Know when it's time to bring in someone else off the bench, and take on a collaborative mindset, not a I am in charge and you will do what I say. I am in charge just means you're responsible if things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, like that's really what it means. So like that's what I think they have in common, the perfection and being afraid of being judged and not being confident enough in themselves to collaborate and ask for help from their team.
Well, how does all of this relate to, say, people in the business world? What would you tell a business person who comes and asks you a lot of these questions?
The same thing. I would just tell them, I'd tell them the same thing that, you just pause and think about the outcome. Think outside of the moment. Don't get so micro, right? Get macro. Like, what is the bigger picture? Is this moving you towards it or away from it? And to let your ego go and ask for help, right?
That's of
Ask for
course
help.
the biggest thing because people won't do that. We have taught each other so much that we don't need to ask for help because we know it all, and we don't.
No, no. Yeah, we don't. And sometimes like what we know when we bring in someone else, it gets enhanced by what they know. So
Yeah.
it's not a right wrong issue. It's a good, better, best situation. Like this is good, but this was better, but this is even better. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. So at the beginning of this year, I decided my husband's retiring from his job at the end of 2026. And so I'm starting to reevaluate like where do I want to spend my time? How do I want to do it so that I can support him in his retirement, even though I'm not going to be retired.
What's
And so
his
I made,
job?
he works on Fort Bragg, maintaining their
Ah,
computer network system.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I said, okay, one thing I can do is this year I'm not going to teach on Fridays. I'm not teaching Fridays. I'm not going to teach on Fridays. And so in January I made that announcement. I said, okay, I'm not going to teach on Fridays. If you want some one-on-one time, blah blah blah. My black belts came to me, like three of my black belts came to me and said, Master Huff, we really like training on Fridays. I said, really? Because I haven't really seen you consistently on Fridays, which is one of the reasons, I explained to them my thought
Yeah.
process behind doing it. And so they said, well, Master Huff, can we teach Friday classes? I said, well,
Mhm.
I know that you can teach Friday classes. Are you willing to commit to teaching Friday classes? Because if we say it, then you guys are going to be responsible for doing it and taking it on. And they said, yes, we really want to do that. And so they have been teaching Friday classes this entire year.
Wow.
And that was just by me, working with them and saying yes. And so yeah, they get my support, like what we were talking about with the vegetables and the dessert thing, and talking about lesson plans and structure and curriculum. But they have been leading that, and that's because we collaborated together and we made sure that that happened. And now they got to observe the fruits of their labor when we did our testing for those ranks. They got to see what their hard work produced, how good the students looked, how consistent they were. They did that. And they got to be proud of what the energy that they put in. And that's really where it's an action. It's a best. I get to do what I do on Fridays like this, and I get to work on the other things for the other students, um, the curriculum and the lessons and the leadership and all the stuff that we create in our community, and they get to have the opportunity to be that for someone else. And to have that adoration, and to have the other students say, I want Mr. Jack to teach, and that's what we get to create when you allow other people to step in and step in and fill roles like that.
And it builds so much character to see that happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes me proud as their instructor that they A were willing to take it on, and B that they've excelled. And they coordinate the schedule. I don't coordinate the schedule. I just provide the lesson plan
They
and
took on the
they implement.
responsibility and they've done it.
And they've done it. And now, thanks to them, every black belt behind them will have to take on some kind of responsibility
There
as
you
part
go.
of them being a black belt because of what it created for them. Right. And so sometimes it's making sure you're putting that that task, or especially for business people, when you put the task as part of the bigger mission, when you put things in context, as for the why and the what, and understand how to, again, how people communicate. If you put it into context and you don't underscore the importance of their actions, they will take it on.
Yeah.
Because when we had that conversation, I told them, when we do this, and if you do not do what you say, that's going to make me look bad because I'm not going to do these things. And we talked about what that would look like. So I made sure they understood that I was counting on them and they had my full support. Then they coordinate and do everything that they need to do
Cool.
without fail. Yeah. So for business people, we forget that it can be a collaboration, and we forget to make sure that the people underneath us understand how important they are to what we do. Sometimes we treat them as like it's your job, you just do your job. And it's not, because it's more than just their job. That's a part of it, but they bring their attitude and their personality and their skills and their creativity, and all of that energy works on the whole.
Well, if people want to reach out to you and talk with you further and maybe learn more, how do they do that?
They can book a call with me. They can go to familymaa.com and fill in the form, and it'll take them to my schedule. And um, we can have a conversation. And just,
FamilyMAA.com.
yes, sir.
Cool. Well, I hope people will reach out. You've
Me
offered a lot.
too.
You've offered a lot of really useful and very relevant things, and I hope that people will take it to heart and reach out to you.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having. I'm so glad I got to meet you at
Well,
Potapalooza.
this has been fun. Well, and I hope all of you have enjoyed this and that you will reach out to Tracy, and I'd like to hear from you. Please email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com. Accessibe is spelled ACCESSIBE. Or you can go to my podcast page, which is www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. Hingson spelled Hingson, just like it sounds. So I would also say that wherever you're listening or watching, please give us a 5-star rating. We really value your comments, your reviews. We appreciate them so much. And I hope that you'll tell other people about the podcast. And also, if any of you, Tracy, including you,
Mhm.
have anyone that you can think of who ought to be a guest, we're always looking for more people to come on and tell their stories and help show why we're all more unstoppable than we think we are. So please feel free
Absolutely.
to introduce me to guests and so on. We're always looking for folks. But again, Tracy, I want to just thank you for being here. This has been fun.
Thank you for having me. It has been fun, from one unstoppable being to the other.
There you